I know this is going to be a really hot take. I know this is going to be controversial, but I'm actually putting in the S tier. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down the best heroes to play in Season 6 for the metal ranks. Whether you're in Diamond or below, we're going to be breaking down all the characters that you should be playing, characters that are going to be harder to get value in, but if you grind them enough, you could get good at them, and everything in between. But do me a huge solid and smash that subscribe button. Only 25% of you are subscribed, and it does a lot to support the channel for absolutely free. But let's jump right into the video. Now, the first character that we got to talk about is Ana, and Ana definitely is a character that the better you get with her mechanically, positionally, the more and more impact you will have, but that doesn't mean that she's bad in the low ranks of play. Honestly, just nading a tank, like an enemy tank on the front line, there's a lot of tanks that you get a ton of value just straight up nading them, whether that's a Rein that puts his shield down is inting in, whether that's a Ramatra, whether that's a Junkrat Queen. There's a lot of characters that you just get free value with your nade. Oftentimes, your sleeps are not going to connect nearly as much. They're difficult to hit. But even without consistently hitting those abilities, I do think that as long as you make sure that you're not playing at a position in a place where you have to self-nade a lot, you're playing near natural cover, and you're looking to provide damage-based value to your team. Like you're looking to actually shoot your gun at the enemy team, utilizing your effective range, your rifle. You don't have to be amazing mechanically to get a lot of value on Ana. Really solid character. I think that she's top of B tier. You probably could even put her in the A tier depending on your expertise on the character, but I still think she's a solid pick even in the metal ranks of play. And there's added plus to her just because she scales really well. As you get better, you can get more and more value. You can hit more sleeps. You can have more offensive nades, long distance nades, more connection with your rifle. There's a lot that you can kind of bring to the table. So yeah, B tier, but very high B tier. Now, the next character that we got to talk about is Ashe, and I do think that Ashe is actually really solid for the metal ranks of play. Not only is she just a really solid character overall, solid DPS, but even if you're not hitting consistent criticals, the fact that your dynamites are very easy to hit, all you have to do is just throw it and it naturally falls into the arc. You don't have to move your crosser or anything at all. And oftentimes, if you're throwing it from far distances, just take your time, really focus on trying to hit it and explode it onto squishies. Try to really ignore the tank with it, and you're going to get a lot of value, forcing supports to use their cooldowns, forcing squishies to run away, or just kill them outright. You don't have to hit criticals with this character to be amazing, but if you do, you're going to get a lot of value. Not to mention you have good mobility, and your ultimate is just phenomenal. When people don't respond to it very well and they're out of position, your ultimate is oftentimes going to win a fight all by itself. I think that Ashe is really strong, and I'm going to put her in the A tier. She's just really good. The next character that we got to talk about for the metal ranks of play is Baptiste. I think that Baptiste is just a really solid pick for a number of reasons. The fact that he has mobility on a stick, you can transfer yourself between the high and the low ground on a dime, is really good, and it makes it hard for people to dive you. You can easily just change your plane multiple times. Let's say you're on the high ground, someone jumps you up top, you fall to the low ground and start prepping your exo boots, they fall down chasing you, you're back up to the high ground, back and forth, super strong, and it's really hard for characters like Tracer, Genji, Winston to chase you very easily. And in addition to all those things, one of the best things about Baptiste is that when you have inting tanks, like tanks that like to brawl and like to take a lot of damage, Ramatra, freaking Reinhardt, Junkrat Queen, Orisa, Zarya, you can pocket an inting tank and keep them alive like almost no other character. So strong, and while you do that, you're not only going to prevent them from feeding, but you're going to get your ultimate very quickly. And I do understand that immortality field is not the easiest to use, but really just using it selfishly a lot of the time is going to get you a lot of value just outright, and occasionally you're going to be able to actually pull off a sick play with it. Just all in all, the full package of this character I just think is really good, and he gets a ton of value even without being mechanically insane on the character, even though I do think that there is a lot of value you can get as you get better on him. I'm putting him in the S tier. I think he's really strong, especially in the metal ranks of play. Now, next up, we do got to talk about Bastion, and I just made a Bastion counter guide that you should definitely check out if you're having trouble with Bastion. It's no surprise that Bastion gets more value in the metal ranks of play. Now, I still think that you can't whip him out in every situation, right? There's certain situations that he's good in, certain situations that he sucks in, and you kind of have to pick him in the optimal situation. However, because people are worse at countering him on average, you're going to be able to force him a bit more, and sometimes you're going to just take over a game and no one's going to stop you. And I think that that factor alone is just makes him a really strong pick, because he's not going to get shut down nearly as much. characters or people are not going to swap to him, and even if they do, they're not going to be coordinated at stopping him. I do think that if you have at least one duo partner that's willing to help you out, like let's say you were duoing Baptiste and Bastion, amazing, or like Diva and Bastion, something that was going to enable you and protect you, then you're just like really unstoppable. But I do think that this character is actually really strong for the middle ranks to play right now, just because of all the buffs he's received. And in the right situations, you can't play him on every map in every situation, but in the right situations, he's definitely an A tier pick. He's really strong, and I'm gonna put him up here. Next up, I do gotta talk about Brig, and Brig is just a really solid character, very powerful, but I don't really think that a lot of people in the metal ranks play Brig correctly. A lot of people think that she's more of a brawler, someone that wants to go in and be aggressive. But if you've watched this channel, you know that Brig is a bodyguard. That's her primary purpose. She's trying to protect, keep your honor alive, keep people on your team alive, anchor your team, create more sustain. And if you're playing Brig, you should not be getting picked. You should be staying alive a lot. And I do think that you can do all those things on Brig, but you have to make sure that you're playing her correctly. Now, if you learn those things, you're going to get a ton of value on Brig just like automatically. And I do think that she gives you such a huge amount of advantage just being on a team. She doesn't require a ton of complex things from you. As long as you're staying and playing the positions that you're supposed to, you're going to get a lot of value. You're going to automatically trigger Inspire. And that's the thing that I would really suggest is make sure that you're not putting yourself out of position to trigger Inspire over and over. I know it can kind of be frustrating when the fight's kind of happening from range and you're not able to trigger your Inspire, but realize that you will be given an opportunity to trigger Inspire with your whip or from safety. You don't have to put yourself in a position where you could risk death in order to constantly trigger Inspire over and over again. Still a really solid character. I think I'm gonna put her in the B tier. I think that she's similar in Ana. I think Ana is like more difficult to get value with. Of course, Brig gets it a little bit easier than Ana, but you know, Ana has like a higher potential, I believe, especially just her nade is so strong. But yeah, both these characters are really solid. I'm gonna put her in the B tier. Nothing wrong with her at all. You could probably justify in the A tier depending on the rank, because I know that the full range, I'm kind of including Diamond in the metal rank section, is pretty broad. But yeah, overall, I'm gonna put her here. The next character that we gotta talk about is Cassidy. And I've already talked about in my regular tier list how Cassidy is a lot weaker than he has been. I know he got the health back, but because he was already weak and then they kind of gave him a buff, but also a nerf to his primary fire, it was kind of a net negative for the character. And I do think that he is a potentially strong character, but really if you're not hitting consistent criticals and kind of playing in the right composition, I feel like he's just going to be worse than a lot of these other hit scan picks. I think he could be okay, and having that extra bit of health is okay, and in the right duo pairing, he could be really strong, right? He's good with Rhines, he's good with Briggs, he's good with a lot of characters that want to brawl or play on the front line, plays behind his tank really well, but he's a little bit strange in that I feel like there's just other characters that are just like better than him, even comparatively via skill. When his mine was a lot better, when his nade was better, right? The nade, when it was its final form, I think he was really strong because that got you a lot of value. But now it's really weak. I mean, it's not like ultimately weak, but it's like it's just way weaker than it was before. It's not giving you a lot of inherent value, not very consistent either. I'm putting him in the C tier. I know that maybe he deserves a B, but I just don't really feel like that nade brings enough inherent value, and I feel like his neutral game, his base game, unless you're really popping off and hitting crit after crit after crit, there's other characters that are just going to be better. So I'm going to put him in the C tier. Definitely let me know down below if you think he deserves maybe B or something like that, but I want to hear your opinion on it. Doomfist. Doomfist is a really weird one, and the reason that Doomfist is a really strange one is mainly because if you have the skill set behind this character, you can smurf metal rank lobbies like no other character. He's one of the highest carry potential characters. Like, you drop a Grandmaster Doomfist in any metal rank lobby and he's like dropping a 40 bomb, and it's not even going to be hard. He's going to just do it with ease. That's how strong this character can be in the right hands. But realistically, if you're a Doomfist player or you're thinking about playing Doomfist, it's going to be a long road. I think that he's really hard to get value with until you get good enough. You have to have fast reaction times, fast actions per minute. You have to really understand the character. So he could be kind of difficult. I'm going to not put him in the lowest tiers of play, like the lowest rank, just because if you get good enough, you can hard carry. But I don't really think he's particularly good as a pick, and he's not something that I would suggest to someone that's actively playing in the metal ranks. He's definitely something that I might suggest to you if you're maybe just you want a character that eventually you're going to be able to be a god with. But like I said, it's going to be a long journey, and yeah, I'm going to put him in the low C tier. And yeah, I think that that's perfectly fine. Next up, let's talk about Diva. We all know that Diva's a very, very strong character in the meta right now, but as far as the meta ranks to play, I think that she's just okay. And the reason I think that is because she's very hard to play perfectly, and you almost need to play her perfectly in order to justify playing her at all. Now, the reason is Diva really wants to pick and choose her fights. There's a lot of tanks that she just doesn't want to fight directly. If you're talking about a Ramatra, a Junkrat Queen, even characters like Orisa and Ryan, you want to play keep away. Like you're positioning in an angle away from your team. You're kind of allowing them to take a certain amount of space, but then pivoting on their backline, looking for someone out of position. And the problem here, there's two problems with this in the meta rank to play. Number one, this is hard to do. It's really hard to do. You have to kind of make sure that you understand how you're supposed to play the tank matchup, what on the enemy team is vulnerable, and you're looking for enemy mistakes. All these things are not easy, right? And then the second thing is that your teammates oftentimes don't understand what you're doing. And this is a really frustrating part of Diva, is you give up space. You're like, okay, I'm going to play keep away from their Rhine. I'm going to let their Rhine walk in, and then I'm going to go on their cast that's out of position, or their honor that's out of position, right? But as your Rhine is walking in, your team are playing way too positionally close, and then they just get walked on by a Rhine and killed, and then they're typing to you, what are you doing, Diva? Stop inting, stop. And they're just complaining to you, right? But you're playing correctly. You don't want to fight a Rhine directly. You're going to die. Why would you fight a Rhine directly? But from their point of view, it's your job to stop the Rhine. And it could become a really frustrating thing. And I think that because of these things, I'm only going to put her in the B tier, even though she's much, much better as you climb up the ranks. I would say the higher in rank you go, the better and better she gets on the tier list. So, yeah. But this is kind of a weird thing, because in the lowest ranks of play, like in bronze, I think she's back to like an AS tier, because you get a lot of value just with her abilities. You get 2 lives, your ultimate's gonna get more value, and you can kind of just brawl a lot of the time and just kill things. Like you're just like a fat Genji that just walks around and kills things. So yeah, AS tier in bronze, then, you know, through all the way until diamond, I think she's like a CB, and then she's back climbing up to AS as you get through Masters and Grandmasters. So anyways, let me know down below how you feel about Diva in the meta ranks to play. Next up, we do got to talk about Echo, and Echo's similar to Doomfist in that she is a character that can carry pretty hard, but she's pretty hard to play, in my opinion. She's not easy to learn. She has a really high skill floor, which means even just learning how to do basic things with the character is pretty difficult to do. However, one of the benefits you get is that people are less accurate the lower in rank you go, so you're going to be able to get away with more things. And then once you hit a wall of skill, you just have to kind of adapt your play and get better gradually. And then of course you can always get that mercy pocket that just makes you really, really strong. I do think that she's probably about, you know, high C, I would say. I think around this range, she's a little bit better than Doom on average, in my opinion. I think she's perfectly fine. I'm going to put her here. Next up, let's talk about Genji. And Genji is another weird one, right? Because Genji is a character that he's really high mechanical skill. He has a pretty high skill floor, but I think that even if you're not great at Genji, you could still get value out of him in the metal ranks of play. One of the things about Genji in particular, if we compared him to like Doomfist and Echo or whatever, is that Genji is really, really great at punishing mistakes. When people are out of position, when people are going and pushing your teammate, when people are by themselves, Genji just gets to kind of dash at them and then just like ints cooldowns into them and then probably kill them if they're out of position. And this is something that Genjis in the lower ranks get to capitalize on, because there's just so many mistakes all the time everywhere. And that's why if you're not even that great of a Genji, you're still going to get value in the low ranks of play, whether it's with Blade, whether it's with the enemy's mistakes. But as you get better and better at Genji, then you can kind of pop off and dominate and just kind of hard carry a game. I think that all these things combined make Genji potentially a really good pick. I'm actually going to put him in the A tier. This one might be a little controversial because people are going to say, hey, Genji's actually hard to learn, hard to play, so that doesn't make sense to put him all the way up here. But I don't really think you need to be good at Genji at all to get a lot of value out of him. Really, just blading. A lot of times people are not going to punish you mid-blade. Just, you know, people are going to play into your deflect really, really easily. You're going to be able to just int in and dash the second anyone's low. People are slower at healing up their buddies. So, like, a DPS is weak. He's going to stay weak from far longer. Sometimes you're just going to get a lot of free kills just by dashing through the enemy team and just get to reset. I'm putting him in the A tier. Yeah, I just think he deserves it. Now, the next character that we have for you is Hanzo. And I think that Hanzo is a character that is just hard to aim with. That's the only thing that's really holding him back, is to get really good at aiming with Hanzo is difficult. But you get some free value just by spamming from distance. And you're going to be able to take these aggressive off angles and spam. and you just get free value that way. I do think that as you get better and better with Hanzo, you're going to be more and more impactful, and I do think that he is a character that can carry, but like I said, he's going to be a little bit harder and less intuitive than a lot of hit scans, especially from people that are coming from outside games. He's fine, but I don't think he's anywhere near the power level of some of the other characters. I'm going to put him in the B tier. I think he's kind of a pretty solid pick. Gets some free value, but I don't necessarily think he's the best thing to be playing right now, especially just after his nerf that makes him a little bit awkward to play. I don't really think that you're going to get a lot of free value, and yeah, I've been coaching a couple of Hanzo players that do struggle with the aspect of players kind of inting into them. You know, there's a lot of Genjis that just kind of dash you, a lot of people that just like really heavily pressure you, and sometimes you're in these awkward situations where you feel like you're not doing enough in a certain amount of time, like you're whiffing too many shots and you're kind of ineffective. So yeah, overall, I'm going to put him in the B tier. I think he can be good. It's going to really depend on how good you are at him and what is pressuring you on the enemy team. Next up, we do got to talk about Illari, and I think that Illari is just really solid. You could do a lot of damage. You have burst healing. You have your auto healing turrets, and I do know that she's going to be getting a nerf soon, or maybe by the time you're watching this, she already got the nerf, and those nerfs are going to be to her ultimate and to her turret, so maybe this is going to make Illari a little bit less effective, but I still think that even if you're not hitting a lot of your criticals, you're still just providing a lot of raw heals. But really, you're going to get the true value out of this character when you start really fragging out. So I think in a similar way to Hanzo, where there's periods of you kind of like trying for value, I'm going to put her like here. I think she's fine. She's not like Nade is more impactful on average, I think, with Ana. She doesn't get as much inherent value as Brig, but I still think that she's fine. That burst healing is still a big deal. Next up, let's talk about Junkrat Queen. Junkrat Queen is a character that you really have to learn your limits on. Once you learn your limits on this character, or just start to, you can start getting more and more value, and then of course increasing the connection that you have with your jagged blades. I think on the maps that she's good in, though, she's just really, really strong. The fact that you can just kind of go in and just force a brawl and just cleave and cleave and cleave is just really, really good. Just make sure that you're really playing around your cooldowns. You're waiting for your cooldowns to be up. You're not engaging when you don't have them. You're playing off the cycles of your cooldowns. I think you're going to be fine. I'm going to put her in the A tier. I think she's really solid, even in the middle ranks of play. The next character that we got to talk about is Junkrat. I think that Junkrat actually does get quite a bit of value on defensive maps. And this is kind of a weird situation because I think that if you were just talking about playing Junkrat always, I think on a lot of maps, on attack, and a lot of maps just in the game, Junkrat's not very good. But on the maps he's really solid in, on defense specifically, I think he's like an A or S tier pick. If I, only included those, I would put him, like up here. I think he's that good in the middle ranks of play. But, if I kind of take everything combined, I'm putting him in the B tier. Because there's just so many maps you can't play him on. It's going to be really hard for you to one-trick this character. Junkrat's all about area denial, and he's really bad at taking space. So if you have to go and take space that the enemy team has, it's way harder denying space that the enemy team is trying to walk into. He can kind of paint an area with damage. Way easier to do that when you're denying space as opposed to taking it. So yeah, I'm going to put him in the B tier. I think that he's kind of like I don't know. He's a more defensive-oriented kind of spam character, similar to like Hanzo or something like that, where not nearly as flexible, but super, super strong, and you get a lot of free value when you're playing him in his appropriate maps on the appropriate side. Anyways, let's talk about Kiriko. Kiriko, this is a weird one because I know that Kiriko is strong. She has a lot of potential, but we already know that she has a very low win rate in the lower ranks of play. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think it's just mainly due to timing. If you want to save somebody, you need to time it right. Like, you need to teleport to them and Suzu them at the right time, know when that's possible. If you mess that up, you're gonna feed. Like, if you teleport to someone and then they die, you're the one that's feeding all of a sudden. In addition to that, you also need to know to aggressively take off angles with your DPS, teleport to them. You need DPS that are also taking off angles. You need, at the same time, you want to like hit more criticals on the character, which is hard to do. I think like it all kind of comes together to make this character fairly hard to play well. She does get a lot of value just by like, heal botting and ulting and stuff like that, but I don't think she gets as much value doing that as some of the other supports that we talk about. Definitely not as much as Baptiste or Ana or Brig. I think overall, though, Kiriko is fine, and she's definitely a character that you can get better with, but yeah, it's going to be hard to get value with her, and I think she's way better the better everyone in the lobby gets. The better your teammates get, the better the opponents get, the better you get, she gets better. I'm actually putting her here in the C tier. Might be a hot take, but that's where I'm going to put her. Next up, we're going to talk about Lifeweaver, and this one's going to be controversial. I already know that it's going to be controversial, and I've already talked about how I think Lifeweaver is such a bad character. This is a hot take for me. A lot of people disagree with me. that's fine. We're gonna have to wait and see just how far this character goes after some months, and we kind of get a full feel for how good this character is. Even though I don't think this character is particularly good in a high ranked meta setting or a top down setting, because I think this character is objectively worse than characters like Kiriko when you're actually being proactive and trying to play the game how it's played at a higher level with, you know, faster and proactive plays and things like that. As far as a heal botting support is, Lifeweaver's the best heal botter. The best heal botter flat out. If you're just playing a character that you're just heal botting your team, protecting them, trying to heal, Lifeweaver is insane. And the reality of it is most people in the meta ranks to play heal bot a lot. They heal bot way too much. And Lifeweaver can't really be proactive and can't really add damage-based value to team fights, which I think is super, super important. But if your Anas aren't doing it, your Brigs, I mean, Brigs aren't supposed to do it anyways, but if your Kirikos aren't doing it, if your Zens aren't doing it, if no one's doing it, everyone's just heal botting, Lifeweaver is the best at that, and that happens so much in low ranks of play. So I know this is going to be a really hot take. I know this is going to be controversial, but I'm actually putting Lifeweaver in the S tier for the meta ranks of play, especially if we're talking about plat and below. I do think that Lifeweaver is actually one of the best characters, just because you get to have so much impact without having to be aggressive, which if you don't know how to properly do, or if you don't do it all, it's going to be more impactful. Now, I do think that Lifeweaver starts to scale off as you get better at other characters and as people get better in general, but just having a really high health pool with your shields, with the ability to do a lot of things in the neutral and all that combined, I think this character is really, really strong. I know that that's going to be kind of strange. It's a really weird placement for Lifeweaver, I think, but I do think that Lifeweaver just gives you a lot of value in the low ranks of play just automatically, and you don't even have to like really go out and work for it or seek kills or be proactive or hit aggressive nades or hit long distance shots. You don't have to do any of that. You just like sit there in the neutral and exist, and you bring a lot of value to your team. And I think that, yeah, I'm putting him in the S tier. I know it's a little bit of a hot take, but I'm doing it. Now let's talk about Lucio, and I'm actually putting Lucio down in the low tiers of play, low ranks of play as well, right along with Kiriko. Character that is far better when people actually utilize your kit, right? If you're speed boosting and your team doesn't move or even runs away when they're up in numbers, you're like, what the fuck? It's, yes, you have a strong ultimate. Yes, you can DPS on the character, but I do think that this character is better the higher in ranks you go. So in metal ranks, he's going to be really frustrating, but he's better and better in the higher ranks. Now, if you're playing with the duo though, playing with the duo brawler, I think he can become way better, you know, A tier maybe if you're playing with a Ryan or something like that. But just in most situations, I think that he's a character that is just gonna feel bad in the low ranks of play. So I'm gonna put him here, and yeah, I'm putting him in the C tier. Next up, let's talk about Mei. I think that Mei is great. I think Mei gets a lot of value. She's hard to kill. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot to love about Mei. I'm actually gonna put her in the A tier. I think she's just a really, really solid pick. Blizzard's gonna get a lot of value. People play into Blizzard a lot more. You're hard to kill. You have your ice block, which means you're even extra hard to kill in addition to being 250 HP. And your wall oftentimes is just gonna kill tanks that are inting straight up. I'm putting her in the A tier. I'm just gonna put her in the A tier. I think it's fair. Mercy is a character that I think is actually pretty good in the low ranks of play for a lot of reasons. Number one, pocketing is just forcing that duo, that synergy that I think is so strong. Mercy, Far Mercies, they're kind of like feel like instant wins. They feel oppressive. A decent soldier or any hit scan on an off angle with a Mercy just feels oppressive. There's a lot of combos with Mercy that just feel oppressive, and people aren't diving or putting a lot of pressure on you. They're not coordinatedly killing you. They're not jumping your pocket very coordinated either. Like, there's just a lot of free value getting on this character. I think I'm gonna put her in the A tier for the metal ranks of play. I'm putting her in the A tier. Yeah, I just think that she just gets a ton of value, and she doesn't really have that much opposition, and she doesn't really have to play around a lot of things. So yeah, Moira, if you remember how I felt about Moira, it's kind of the same. I'm putting Moira up, you know, up here in the S tier. Not really sure where I would place, you know, the differences in these, but yeah, Moira just gets to be basically a DPS, also has an auto heal, also has mobility. She's just really, really strong, and people that can't aim or can't punish her, you just see it. You see it sometimes when there's a Moira that just has the highest amount of damage, highest amount of limbs, highest amount of heals out of everyone in the freaking lobby, and it can happen really easy with Moira. If you know your limits and you know how to play this character, she could feel like a more powerful Tracer or Genji, depending on the rank you're in. The fact that you don't have to aim very well, really the thing about Moira that gets a lot of value is that in order to stop her, you really need a certain mechanical threshold to be hit. Because like a Moira that's like you know, dodging fancy and doing all that, that's not going to really work against good Hanzos. They're just going to kill you. It's not going to really work against good Casses. It's not going to really work against even good Tracers. The better and better people get mechanically, the easier and easier they are going to be able to punish you. And that means the worse and worse they are, the more you get away with for free. Because people are whiffing. And if they whiff 1-2 shots, they're dead. That's it. They're just dead. Yeah, I'm putting her up here. And I know it's kind of strange that I have 3 supports in the top. But you just think about what these supports can do. I'm actually going to put Lifeweaver here. But, I mean, they just do so much. Both of these just both add damage and tons of burst healing and have ways to keep themselves alive, and have good mobility. And then this one is just so powerful from that neutral position. I'm just putting them all in the S tier. Next up, we do got to talk about Orisa, and this is another one that I feel like just gets a lot of value due to how the game is played in the metal ranks of play. And yeah, spoiler alert, not there. I'm putting Orisa in the S tier. The reason that I'm putting Orisa in the S tier is because the lower in rank you go, the more and more you're getting away with, and you're getting free value because people are playing into you wrong. I've taught on this channel a lot that you're not supposed to focus on Orisa. You're not supposed to just hit on Orisa over and over again, because you're not going to kill her, especially on Orisa that's near cover. You're just never going to kill her. But the reality of it is, anyone that's in the plat rank or below, it's just hard committing to this Orisa. They're playing way out of position, and you're just getting a lot of value. So I think that Orisa is a really solid pick, and in the lower ranks of play, she just feels like a menace that's just unkillable. And I'm putting her in the S tier. I know. I just think that she just gets that much value, and you don't even have to be that good at Orisa to get this value. You just have to play her and exist and just apply pressure and play around your cooldowns, play around a piece of cover so that when you don't have your cooldowns, you can dip around cover, and you will never die and get some crazy amount of value and just win a game for free without even requiring that much skill from you. Next up, let's talk about Pharah. Pharah is a fantastic character. If you have that pocket, without that pocket, I would not suggest playing her. It's a weird situation because, like, with the pocket, I'd put her like high A. Without the pocket, I'd put her like D or low C. I'll probably make a compromise and put Pharah like, you know, here. I'll put Pharah like here. Sure. B. I think that's fine. Rampart is a character that I think is really, really solid, but maybe not as strong. He doesn't get as much free value as Orisa does, and definitely takes more skill and coordination to work. But your ultimate is the best. Like, your ultimate is just giga busted. I mean, it's giga busted no matter what rank you're in, but especially in the metal rank, you're just gonna win fights straight up. You win fights based on your ultimate, and I do understand that there's skill that you need to learn around this character, how to properly balance your cooldowns and your aggression, and all that takes a bit of difficulty to get. But as far as just oops, I win, you have it on a stick. I'm putting Rampart up in the A tier. That's just how strong I think Ramartra's ultimate is, and that's how strong I just think Rampart as a character is. Not to mention, Rampart will scale really well as you get better and better at the character. You're going to be able to carry harder and harder. So yeah. Reaper is a really solid character as well in the metal ranks of play, just because people don't really counter him that well. I don't necessarily think, I'm actually going to put Far down here. I don't actually think that he is, you know, the most reliable as people get better and better at dealing with him. But as people have more gaps in their positioning and they don't help each other nearly as fast, Reaper can get a lot of value. Just make sure that you're teleporting aggressively to like a high ground, setting up, falling in, looking for value, wraithing away, and kind of repeating that cycle. That's like the best cycle that I would suggest. But overall, I think he's pretty good. I'm putting him here. Thank you, sir. Reinhardt is fantastic. Reinhardt is really, really good. You get so much value off of Rein in the metal ranks of play. People just know that when Ryan's in, they're supposed to go in. People play around your shield. Shatters are never getting stopped. You're just gonna get free shatters. Rein is just super, super strong in the metal ranks of play. He's so freaking good. I think that he doesn't get as much free value as Orisa, but I think his peaks are higher. I'll probably put him like right here, but I think he actually, if you're good at Rein, I would say he's better. But if you're someone that just wants to climb on tank and you're not really good at any of them in particular, Orisa gives you more free value than Rein does. But Rein definitely has a harder hitting amount of impact if you're better with him, especially that ultimate's really, really good. Roadhog, man, Roadhog's weird. I think he's probably here. You know, in the normal tier list, I put him in the lowest ranks of play, but I don't necessarily think that he is that bad in the low tiers because people aren't countering you as much. Don't think he's great by any means, and you have to be pretty good with him to make him work. And I think that if you're good with some of these other characters, it's just better. But I don't think he's unplayable, and there's more gaps for you to be able to shut people down, especially when you have Honest not nading you nonstop or not aware, not hitting sleeps on you. I think, yeah, he's a little bit better than he is in most ranks of play, or the high ranks of play, than he is in the low ranks of play. Sigma. I think Sigma's really good. He gets a ton of value just by existing. He's really, really good on the poke maps, especially any of the long distance maps. You just really want to play him and just play the attrition game. The number one tip I'll give you on Sigma is just to play your effective range. Don't let any of these close range characters, especially tanks, get on top of you. The Rein should never be on top of you. The Junkrat Queen should never be on top of you. And what that specifically means is that in those matchups, you need to be conserving your rock so that you can deny those engages. A Rein pins to get close to you, you freaking hit him with the rock. A Junkrat Queen uses her freaking shout, you hit her with the rock. You deny these things. You shouldn't be using your rocks randomly, and you should never allow these characters to walk up onto you, because that's when they're in their effective range and you're not. If you just lengthen the engagement and play your range, they're going to be doing nothing, and you're going to be doing a lot, and you're going to win the game. So yeah, I'm putting Sigma. I think you're going to put him up here. He's just really good. He's really, really good. Sojourn. I think Sojourn's really solid. Oftentimes, she feels somewhat similar to Hanzo, where she has periods of time where it feels like you're not being consistent enough because you're not hitting enough shots, but a bit more consistent than Hanzo is, I would say. Similar, though, and I do think she's fairly hard to get good with, but still very, very powerful if you're hitting your shots, and the better you're getting mechanically at her, the more and more impact you'll have. I'm going to put her just like slightly above Hanzo. I think that they're kind of similar in impact. And of course, you know, I put these characters a bit higher up in the tier list, in the full tier list. And it's just like, as you get better and better at these characters, I think there's like a certain threshold where it's pretty hard to get free value on these characters. But as you get better mechanically, they're going to quickly rise the ranks. Soldier 76 is a character that I just think is really, really good. He just, you know, straight up really solid. I'm putting him in the S tier. Really solid as a DPS, mainly because he's just, you know, providing consistent value. By the way, I'm moving Lifeweaver down here. But really consistent value. He plays really well as just someone that's just bringing constant damage, constant pick potential. He can take off angles by himself. He relies less on his teammates than any other DPS because he has that heal station. He has no mobility. He plays really well for people that are not Overwatch players and they're just coming to Overwatch because he just lines up really, really well with other hit scans, you know, just from other games, right? If you're a Soldier 70 or a Call of Duty player or an Apex player, Soldier's going to be a really, really easy pickup for you. I think overall he's just a really solid character, so I'm going to put him in the S tier. Sombra is a character that I think is not really that great in the metal ranks of play. People are not going to work off your hacks or your coordination. You would prefer to play this character in a dive, getting your up, and this character's not easy to play either. She's fairly hard. I would say that I'm going to put her kind of down here, where I think that she can get the value as you climb the ranks, but in the low ranks of play, she's really hard to get the value out of, and you're never going to have that hack into dive into connection. Like, it's just really hard to get the synergy with Sombra in the low ranks of play. And sometimes you'll get like a fatty MP and your teammates will not follow up with it. It could be a frustrating character. A character that is far better with teamwork and cohesion, just like how Lucio is, and just like how kind of Kiriko is as well. Symmetra. Symmetra's a weird one. I keep saying weird. Stop. Okay, I'm cutting that. Symmetra is hard to place because we're still not perfectly sure with how good she is. It seems that her changes made her a lot weaker in the low ranks of play, but really her changes made her weaker, period, in the low ranks of play and the high ranks of play and everywhere. And she's just in a really frustrating state where I think that most people think that she's just super, super weak. I think she could still get value. She could still be okay, but overall, I'm going to put her in the bottom of B. That might be too generous, to be honest, because this character is fairly weak right now. But in the metal ranks of play, the fact that you have more health, you have a powerful ultimate, if people just allow you to stay alive and brawl for long enough, you can build up a high beam. I'm still going to put her here. I think that that's probably fair. Some of you Symmetra grinders, definitely let me know how you feel about Symmetra in the metal ranks of play right now down below. She's the only one I'm not 100% sure on, I think. But yeah, I'm going to put her here. Torb. Definitely not as strong. He was in the S tier before his nerf. I still think he's very strong. I'm going to put him here. I think he's just really solid. Turret gets a lot of free value. You're just going to be able to just generate a lot of damage. He was stronger when his turret was buffed, but he's still really strong now. I think he's right alongside these characters. I'm actually going to swap Genji down to the bottom of A. I think Mercy's a little bit better. But yeah, Torb is just really solid, really powerful. Actually, I'm going to do that. He just brings a lot to the table. He's just really, really good. And He just brings, I keep using this term intrinsic value, and all I'm talking about here is just value that you don't really have to work for. Value that you get the second you pick a character. This is the value that you get, and I think that Tor brings a lot of that. He can contest characters like Echo and Pharah with his turret. He brings a lot of automatic value. He's really good in brawl mirrors and even poke. He's fine. I'm gonna put him there. Tracer. Now, Tracer is a character that is just hard to play, right? In the meta ranks of play, she's hard. She's really hard. I would say that if I could see you play and I saw how good you are at Tracer, I think that you know, realistically, being just decent at Tracer, you could probably justify her somewhere around here. But for most players, it's going to be really hard to play Tracer because she's a character that you need really, really good cooldown control, really good movement, really good mechanical skill. I think I'm going to put Tracer at the top of C tier. Yeah. I know that I put her in the S tier for the full tier list, but she's just really hard to learn. And I think that unless you have the skill set required to play her, she's going to be hard. Now, I'm not saying don't grind her, by the way. I actually suggest to grind a character like this because while it's going to be harder for you to get value with her, you're going to get better and better at the character. And then eventually you're going to be able to pop off and carry yourself out of the rank you're in. But it can be a frustrating experience for you. So these are the characters I would suggest more if you're trying to have the easiest time climbing. But that doesn't mean that some of these characters aren't good for your development as a player in the long haul. It just kind of depends on what you want personally as a player. Widowmaker, I'm putting Widowmaker in the D tier. Before the nerf, I would put her higher, even in the low ranks of play. But right now, you need to be good at her mechanically to not be that great, even at her peak. You have to be insanely good to just like deadlift a game. Just right now, I don't really think I would suggest playing Widowmaker in the metal ranks of play. If you're a demon at Widow and you've already were a demon at Widow, then sure. If you really want to be good at Widow, then sure. But right now, you're going to work really, really hard to make a character work that I don't really think is that good right now, even if you do make her work. I'm going to put her in the D tier. If you're really wanting a character like this, just play like Hanzo or Sojourn or Ashe. I think is just going to get you more value on average. So yeah, I'm putting her in the D tier. I'm sorry. Winston is a character that I think is really strong when you have coordination. Not nearly as good without it. I'm putting Reaper or Winston in right above Reaper. Yeah, I think that if you have a duo or trio and you're coordinating your jumps, he can be just fine. But a lot of the time, he's just not going to be very good because he really wants people to engage with him and be coordinated with him. It's hard enough to set that up in Grandmaster, much less freaking any other rank. So yeah, I'm putting him in the mid B tier. It's just pretty hard to get value out of him on average. He's still a really strong character. You can still solo carry with him. He really wants a whole composition tailored around him, as opposed to Diva, which I think is a bit more flexible. Still, he's not bad though. Hammond, I think Hammond is great. Hammond is great. Super self-sufficient. Works with hit scans. Work with divers. I'm putting Hammond in the S tier. Just really self-sufficient. I'm actually gonna put Hammond above Lifeweaver. Yeah, just the fact that you can kind of do a lot even without your team. I just want you to understand that the way to climb on Hammond, and I've coached a lot of Hammonds here, and this is the biggest thing that most Hammonds miss, and I've had more Hammonds to Grandmaster than any other person I've coached, I believe. I think like most of the Hammonds I've coached have gotten to Grandmaster, and it's simple. All you have to do is make sure that you're looking at where your team is, looking at where the enemy team is, and making sure to time your slams in the line of sight of your team. This is super obvious, right? You would be surprised how much this doesn't happen. The reason is Hammond just kind of operates at a much faster tempo than everyone else. So you're going out, you're rolling in, you're setting up, you're going out, you're rolling in, and your team is still like around the corner. They're not ready to help you. You got to make sure that you're patient and waiting for your team to follow up on these slams, and you're going to get so much value. I'm putting Hammond in the S tier. Super, super strong character. Zarya, I think is very strong as well. I'm going to put Zarya here. Really, really strong. Gets to brawl, gets to build charge. Doesn't get as much free value as some of these other characters up top. But I think that once you get a little bit of skill involved and make sure that you're timing your engagements based on your bubbles, you're going to be just fine. I think you can get a lot of value on the character. She's definitely a solid character with a really good ult. And then Zen. I think that Zen is okay. I think he is probably... I'm going to put him right here. Zen is good. Discording tanks, applying a ton of pressure. Yes, you're more likely to get pressured out. You're not going to get that much peel. But on the flip side, people aren't going to be coordinated diving you like they do in high ranks of play, where you're doing a lot on Zen, and then all of a sudden you have like a Tracer Sombra like freaking both simultaneously attack you, and you're just like, what the fuck? Yeah, that happens a lot, and you just don't have to deal with that. So it's something that it's going to be harder for you to get value on this character because he's a very mechanically difficult character. But you get a lot of intrinsic value just by discording a tank and just spamming and applying damage-based value. super, super strong. I think is a really, really good pick. But this is what I would place right now. The metal tiers of play. This is the tier list that I have for you. Definitely let me know if you agree or disagree with any of the picks down below. Yeah, please smash the like, subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for coming by, and I'll see you next time.